Weston McKennie.
Weston McKennie just put in another shift for Juventus. Another match where he's everywhere, winning balls in his own box, popping up in the opponent's 6-yard area, tracking runners, making late runs into space. And I'm watching Italian pundits just lose their minds over him again and again and again. But here's the thing. Weston McKennie is not the flashiest player. He's not going to dribble past 5 defenders. He's not going to curl in free kicks from 30 yards away. But ask any coach who's worked with him, and they'll tell you the same exact thing. This guy is absolutely indispensable. So today, we're going to break down what makes Weston McKennie the player that every single manager falls in love with, because there's something genuinely special happening right now that doesn't really show up in the highlight reels. You know what's funny? There's kind of this debate going on right now in the YouTube world where it's like, is McKennie a jack of all trades or a master of none? And honestly, that's completely the wrong question for me, because the entire premise misses the point of what makes McKennie actually special and what he does, what makes him valuable. It's that he doesn't need to be a master of one thing. He just needs to be elite at reading the game that requires him in any given moment. Think about it like this, right? We have specialists where Christian Pulisic is either a winger or a 10. You know that. You know exactly what you're getting. Tyler Adams, defensive midfielder, lock it in. But Weston McKennie, the man has played right back, center mid, attacking midfielder, on the wing, as a box-to-box 8, even as an emergency center back. So he's genuinely good in all of them, and that's what makes him so special, I think. Juventus does not need to play him everywhere because they're desperate. They play him everywhere because he makes every single position that he plays a little bit better. And that's not just versatility for versatility's sake. That's tactical intelligence, because a player that understands space and understands his role and executes it without an ego, that is exactly what is making Weston McKennie special right now. And that's exactly why coaches are obsessed with him, because you might remember that pretty much every single summer that there's a transfer window, Weston McKennie is on the chopping block for Juventus. It's like the 3rd or 4th year in a row where every single week there's a new news article about how McKennie is kind of the first player out at Juventus. And year over year over year, the manager that comes in, or give him a few minutes on the pitch or in practice, and he's going to make himself come good and be the player that kind of makes himself indispensable for the team. What I see, at least from my perspective, is that most midfielders, when they push forward, they're looking for space to receive the ball. They want it at their feet, or they want to turn, they want to create, and that's fine, that's normal. McKennie, he's kind of a different breed entirely, because he's not running necessarily to receive at his feet. He's running to finish the play. Every single movement is kind of designed around one question, and can I get on to the end of this? And here's what is mental about this. He does this while still doing all of his defensive work. He'll win a tackle in his own half. 30 seconds later, he's arriving late in the box for a goal. And that transition from defense to attack, that engine, that awareness of where he needs to be next, that is world-class stuff that is happening right now. The defenders hate playing against him because they can't figure out where he's going to be or where he's going to pop up next. Is he dropping deep? Is he making a third-man run? Is he crashing the back post? Yes, the answer is yes to all of those questions. There's kind of this other debate separate from kind of what he does so well. And here's where things get a little bit spicy, because the question is Weston McKennie the greatest American midfielder of all time? Now, before you type in your angry comments, hear me out, because this is actually kind of a fascinating conversation, especially for me, who kind of grew up in the Michael Bradley, Jermaine Jones, Claudio Reyna, Tab Ramos era. Those are legends, absolutely legends of the U.S. men's national team. Keep in mind, McKennie is doing something that none of them did. He is a locked-on starter at Juventus, and not just on the team. He is starting for one of the biggest clubs in the world, where tactical discipline is not optional, it is survival for a lot of these teams. The argument against McKennie, I think, is that he hasn't necessarily defined a generation yet. He hasn't had that World Cup or big Champions League moment. And fair enough, you know, Bradley dragged us through 2014. Jones was immense with that goal in 2014 as well. But the argument for McKennie, look, he's playing week in and week out at a consistency that we have not touched before. And it is a compliment to him just how coaches at the highest level continue to trust him in big matches. Now, I genuinely think we are watching one of the best American midfielders of all time. We're just so used to seeing him do kind of normal but extraordinary things that it's kind of absurd his career trajectory has not really reached the peak, at least in the minds and hearts of fans just yet. Let's kind of get to the heart of that, because why do these coaches universally love this guy? It's not just his versatility, it's not just the work rate. It's kind of the combination of three things that rarely exist in one player. First is what we've talked about already, the tactical flexibility, because he doesn't necessarily play different positions, he understands the responsibility of many different positions. That is very different from someone that is just flexible to slot them in one position or the other. He really does make kind of any position that he's playing in a little bit better, and it's a step up from someone else who's going to play that position on his team. And that's not something you can really teach. That's just football IQ, and that's years of development, I think, in Germany's youth system paying off. I think the second one is just zero ego, and it's kind of weird because when McKennie was younger, there was a lot of drama attached to him. There was that time in Nashville, right, with the U.S. national team camp. But you don't hear about him in the news as like wanting to move on from a team. He just shows up and does whatever he needs to do. Do you need him to play right back against a dangerous winger? Done. Do you need someone to make late runs and score goals? Done. Need someone to sit deep and recycle possession? Done. Coaches love players that they can trust, players who don't need their hand held, and players who can make their job easier. And he covers ground like a maniac. I think the third thing that we need to talk about is just his relentless engine. Because if we're looking at the U.S. national team, we kind of apply this a lot to Tyler Adams for the most part. We can be very fortunate in the sense that we have a lot of midfielders, by the way. I'm not just talking about Weston McKennie right now. Someone like Brenden Aaronson, who just has a complete work rate and zero ego. I think that's going to be a really special asset for the U.S. national team going into the next World Cup. I also think what makes McKennie a locked-in starter is just he fights his way into every single first team that he's been a part of. Whether he was 18 years old at Schalke, became a Bundesliga regular, whether he earned his move to Juventus and now he's one of the first names on the team sheet for one of Italy's biggest clubs, that is not luck. That is something that he's worked to do, plus his talent. And what I really love about his game, at least from watching him over the last, call it like 10 to 15 games, is you can kind of see the little pieces of his journey complement the way that he plays now. There's no coasting. In every single match, he plays like he's got something to prove. And maybe that's what makes him special. He's kind of reached the top, but he still plays with the hunger of someone that is fighting for his spot. Now, I think the bottom line here is Weston McKennie might not be the player that casual fans kind of get excited about. He's not going viral for rainbow flicks. He's not scoring 30-yard screamers every week. But if you understand soccer, if you appreciate kind of the game within the game, you know exactly how special this guy is. He is the player that every coach dreams about, versatile, intelligent, relentless, and at least on the field, completely drama-free. He kind of makes everyone around him better by being excellent himself. He solves problems on the pitch. He shows up when it matters. Is he the greatest U.S. men's national team midfielder ever? Maybe, and I think the case against that actually is he's not even a locked-in starter for this team going into the World Cup. We could very easily see a midfield of Tyler Adams, Christian Pulisic, and Brenden Aaronson kind of be the 8, 6, and 10 of the positions in the midfield. So we should just appreciate him for what we've got. For me, that's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments, and where does McKennie rank in U.S. men's national team midfielders history. I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Peace, peace, peace.